Hello, good morning, everyone. We are starting our webinar. So today is Monday and we are speaking about agility. And thank you for joining this morning. My name is Elena Grinyuk and I'm responsible for the Central Eastern Europe at the SME Banking Club, and I will be host today. And as always, every Monday, I'm very glad to be joined by John Mark Williams from Agile Business Consortium and Maria Tsenusa from Integrated Consulting Groups. Thank you, and very happy to see you today.
Good morning, Elena. Nice to see you, and Maria.
Nice to see you.
Before we start, just a quick mention from my side on the organizational moments. So our webinar is planned for half an hour. So the format as usual is a panel discussion. So please, you're welcome to type your questions even right now from the start, and we will be answering even on the go, I think. And we are recording this webinar, so right after we finish, you will receive the link to the video. So today we discussed the topic of Agile in marketing. So why is it important to be Agile in marketing as well, and how to implement it? And actually, should a marketing person be included in the development team? So in the same way as we discussed in the previous episodes about finance teams and risk teams. So I'm passing it once the word to our experts. And John, will you start?
Thank you. I'm very concerned about being described as an expert. It's very dangerous. However, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Agile Mondays. Agile marketing. One of the things that I thought about when I thought about this subject was Agile marketing is a bit like Agile leadership. If it's done well, then it shouldn't need to be called Agile. It should just be done well as marketing. But I thought let's have a look at the principles of agility and see how they might be applied to marketing. And frankly, there's no better place to go to look at the principles of agility than the work of Stephen Denning, who is probably the nearest thing we've got to a guru in the Agile world, and his book, The Age of Agile from 2018. And the reason why I think this is so important to marketing is because Steve posits the three laws of Agile. The law of the small team, in other words, small teams perform much better than large bureaucracies. The law of the customer, and every organization should be relentlessly customer focused, and perhaps that should even be the first law. And then the law of the network. And the idea of the law of the network is it's not good enough to have an agile team within an organization. The whole organization needs to be a network of agile teams in order for that organization to become agile. So if we think about those three applications and apply them to marketing as a discipline, small team, customer, the law of the network, how does that play out in marketing? A very straightforward way, really. So an agile marketing function within an organization. I'm thinking particularly within a bank here, because of course marketing is a fundamentally important discipline in a bank because of the competitive nature of banking. So a marketing team within a bank should function with the flexibility of a small team. Banks should try, particularly in the SME world, should try and step away from the idea of having a big monolithic marketing team and start to behave a bit like their customers with that agility and flexibility and small team approach that SMEs have. Secondly, they should focus relentlessly on the value for the customer. And rather than have product-based campaigns, have campaigns that are based around a very specific, small, focused group of targeted customers, whether it's a particular geography, a particular sector, a particular size of SME customer. But start with the customer in mind and think about what are the products that could contribute value to that customer. And then thirdly, and this is where the whole organization comes into play, there's no point in the marketing team being agile if the rest of the organization is a big bureaucracy. It is absolutely crucial for the whole bank to think in terms of how do we market ourselves to the customers, and certainly all of those divisions within the bank which are relevant to SMEs. How do we market ourselves to SMEs? How do we articulate, how do we position ourselves as a set of agile teams within the bank in order to fulfill that value? So Agile marketing within an SME banking function like a small team, focus on the value given to the customer, and connect the whole of the bank's resources as a network to the benefit of that small customer. It doesn't sound like impossible. However, we all know that within a bank, anything that starts with flexibility could indeed be different. And yet there are some examples. And Maria, I know that you've got not just some thoughts around this, but a very good example of how this might work within a bank. Over to you, Maria.
Thank you, John. I would start with something that I remember from a webinar that I saw last week. And one of the guys that wrote the Agile Manifesto was there. So imagine me, Agile groupie, all over the place, really excited to see the guy talking. And he was mentioning that one of his biggest regrets, and for the others as well, was the fact to include the word software in the manifesto. Because when they wrote the whole thing and they designed the whole thing, even though they were a team of IT people, actually the whole thing was designed as an approach to business. Because it was their proposition to organize a business in order to find value and to offer customer value. And he was further saying that he's receiving a lot of questions like, can we do Agile there? Can we do Agile like in finance, in marketing, in whatever? And he's all of the times he was like appalled, but Agile is not for a department. Agile is not something that we do and we are like, cool and the rest of the world is different. Agile is something that we do in business for the customer. We don't do it for the sake of the Agile. So I really like this part. So Agile can be everything at the end of the day, as long as you deliver customer value. And going second to an applied example, I have had some experience of being, let's say, in charge with some Agile teams. And I was a while ago, I was a tribe lead and I had some squads working together to deliver value for a customer segment. I have to tell you, like business-wise or like personal-wise as well, it was one of the most fulfilling experiences of my career, because once you manage to design a team and to get it together and to define the greater purpose that is the most important for everyone. Basically, what happens, the magic happens that regardless of the specialties that you have in the team, regardless of the fact that people from IT are in the team, people from business, from process design, from marketing, or you name it, everybody is focused on something that is outside them, and they want to contribute from their angle to it. And what we had was like two different squads, and we were about to launch a product, and it was like a flagship product for us. So it was like something that we knew it's going to be really, really very important, and everybody was working for months to it. And it will be also, we were all very nervous that we wanted to be first in the market. We really wanted to make a splash, let's say, with the release, yes. And maybe some of the guys that are watching us know how it is before release, and especially if you are a big company. You put your little product in the lake, and you hope you don't create too many waves to disturb the other boats that are on the same lake. So basically, you do the regression, you do the integrated testing like a couple of weeks before the release. And what happened was that, of course, we were going on the schedule, and you'll have a lot of people wanting to release their own products as well. And you'll have also the testing environment that would be unstable sometimes. And what the magic of having marketing in the product team, in the product designing team. The marketing guy was also in charge with the, let's say, release to the world of the product. So it doesn't matter that you have the best product. If nobody knows about it, then it cannot reach the customer. So he was like dead focused on having a nice press release with a conference, with a press conference, and with a demo, and to target the customers. So he really wanted to launch the campaign. And for people that know what that means, It also means that you need to do some stuff like 1 or 2 weeks at least in advance. So the magic of having an agile team, the marketing guy, was actually that he was one of the guys, together with the IT team as well, that was painfully aware of the stability of the testing environment, and that knew by heart any moment of the day what is the percentage of testing that we have managed. Is that threatening? Can we go live or not? And this happened, and actually seeing him together with the IT team all the time connecting the dots, because he wanted to make sure that he's doing the best job as well. It is something that is so encouraging as a leader to see in your team happening, because usually in the big corporates, and we know how it is, you have these silos or these departments, and then you communicate formally. You organize a meeting, or you tell to your boss, and your boss is telling the other guy's boss, and then we decide we need to meet up to do. And actually, this happened, this osmotic communication, if you want, happened real time. And you don't need these formalities. And people were reacting and pointing out stuff that would prevent us from delivering on the spot. So I think you cannot be efficient enough as an organization if you stay with your own departments in your own way, organized as you want, not putting the customer value first and not creating this mixed team. It doesn't matter how efficient you are. You will not be able to have the same level of communication, at least, in order to create value for the customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that in fact, two things that spring out of what you said. The very first one was this idea of the Agile Manifesto and the fact, the challenge, if you like, of having the word software in the manifesto. And I think if we think about an organization, the hardware in an organization is the equipment and the materials and the buildings and the finance and all that sort of stuff. The software is the people in an organization. And if we replace the word software in the Agile Manifesto with the word people, we are uncovering better ways of developing people by doing it and helping others do it. And then if, it mentions software later on in the manifesto, it talks about working software. If we talk about not working software, but effective people, then actually the manifesto is right, even on that software, people as software level. And I think what I really, really like about that is it's not difficult for us to think about the people as the software in an organization and to focus on agility as being a characteristic of the people. So I think that is that approach to the Agile Manifesto gives it still legitimacy, even in those softer areas in all of the other parts of the business away from IT. The second thing is the point that you made, actually, Maria, about it feels good to be in an Agile team. And I think one of the most underrated and under-promoted benefits of agility is actually it does really feel good to be part of an Agile team, where not just everybody is both permitted and encouraged to do the best that they can, to contribute the best of what they've got, actually to do so with this higher purpose in mind, which is value for the customer, the reason for the organization being. And I think the thing that does is it unleashes innovation in people. It allows people to, once they're given permission to really add value for the customer in the best way they can, actually, it is remarkable how innovative people can be. People are awesome given the opportunity to be so. And this is, I think, why it's so important for the whole organization to be involved in the marketing effort. Marketing people, marketing teams are by definition quite creative teams. However, people in other parts of the organization can be creative as well. And we did talk, and Elena mentioned earlier on, about this idea of having a marketing business partner in an SME banking team, like a risk business partner or an HR business partner. Actually, the whole Agile team should be made up of partners from various parts of the organization, or at least should include those partners as the advisors, the support team to the Agile project team, if we call it that. And I think that's your example is a very good one, that actually given the opportunity and encouragement, actually people will not just produce the best work that they can, they will pull other people in as well to help them do that. And I think we know that the bureaucracy, I'll use the word bureaucracy in banks, is quite a challenge to overcome sometimes. If it can be overcome, there's no limit to the agility that an SME banking team can show.
Indeed. Actually, it's the biggest adversary of a company in its way to gain agility. It's itself, basically. And the banks are they're best known for kicking themselves in the other leg, let's say, in that way. Because even when you have the start of building these agile teams, the way it's done, and there's no other way of doing it, I suppose, is to start small, or you start creating these small teams, small layers, islands in the bank. But actually, the way you create the governance, the corporate governance around it, the way you it's not enough to say to people that, okay, and now you need to work agile. We are so cool. The group is telling us that we need to implement agile. That's something I've heard so many times, also the clients working. But it's actually showing the people what they can do, what are their boundaries, and allowing them to contribute, because you have this sense of purpose that you need to fulfill. And actually, to be able to fulfill that, your job, is something that is extremely motivating, and you will be able to keep those teams through, good or bad times. So you'll be able to keep them on the long run if they are driven by the same purpose of delivering value to the customer. But before that, we need to understand what is our product. Why do we want to deliver it? For which kind of customer we want to deliver it? Why do they use it? What are the parts that are important for our customers to be delivered? What needs do we try to fulfill? So once we have that in mind, and it's not about us delivering a product, it's about the customer wanting something and us positioning ourselves in a way that we are able to fulfill that need. Once you put this outside, and then it comes also to your organization that is along value streams. You understand what needs to be in a team, what kind of people you need in a team in order to be able to deliver like 80% of your product independently. This is how you create the teams, and this is how you create also the purpose for the people.
It's quite interesting that, because one of the things that strikes me, having been in marketing for quite a long time and in banking for quite a long time, on and off, one of the challenges that a marketing team faces is that everybody knows how to do marketing. Absolutely everybody in the organization thinks they know how to do marketing, and consequently, I know that many marketing teams have a sort of inbuilt resistance to getting input from other parts of the organization, because they feel not defensive, just challenged, because people will come along and say, well, you should be advertising it here, you should be promoting it here, you should be looking at these people. And I think there's in a way, for marketing teams to be effective in engaging the rest of the organization around the agile agenda, one of the ways to do that is I think it was Stephen Covey in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of the most important habits, he said, was seek first to be understood. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think it's important for marketing teams to be able to say, okay, actually, maybe we don't know everything. Maybe we should actually allow other people to give us lots and lots of ideas about how we as a marketing team can perform well in order to engage them with the things that we do. And then to have a frank conversation with them based around the data, based around the analytics about which things might actually work, bearing in mind most people who, when they say, I know what the marketing team should do, most people actually, when they say that, don't have in mind the purpose of fulfilling a customer need. Most people have in mind, I think we should do this because I think it's a good idea. So marketing,
or the sales target.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So marketing, if they can, first of all, clearly identify the unmet need that suits the purpose of the organization and the customer, and then engage other people on how they might solve that, and then work with them on the actual solutions that might be possible. Because the first job is to draw the rest of the organization in. And it's quite a challenge sometimes to do that.
Indeed, indeed. And actually, before we had the marketing person in our team, we were kind of away on how this kind of campaigns were done for the customer. And actually, it is true. We were everybody tends to know what is better, and you tend to say, okay, well, I know what sells. So I'm a good salesperson. I know what I meet with the customers every day. But actually, a good marketing is a marketing done that is based on validated learning, that is based on data and analytics in place. And for that, you really need to build a long run. So I've seen some manifesto for marketing, and I know we were discussing about that last week in preparation for our seminar. And we were thinking if this is something that is, it should be, it's new, it's something that we should encourage and mention. And it's actually the manifesto. You can Google it and you can find it, Agile Manifesto for Marketing. It's actually stating this very common sense things that a good marketeer would know by heart. And a good marketeer would know by heart that you don't do campaigns based on feelings, based on discussion with two customers, based on the boss says so. You actually do campaigns based on data. But for that, you need to have the technology infrastructure in place, because you need to, for big numbers, like you would find for banks in SMEs or for the retail business, for every retail companies, you need to understand what drives the data behind, and you need to understand your customers, because also doing a marketing campaign, servicing a customer from marketing perspective doesn't mean to just send emails to everybody in your address book, because you'll just annoy them. And the third time you're going to send, they will just put unsubscribe. It means that you understand the propensity to buy for your customers. It needs to understand what is the next best offer for your customers, so that whenever you communicate with your customer, you communicate based on their needs, not based on the fact that you have a sales campaign and, oh my God, it's the end of the quarter and we need to fulfill our targets. So
Absolutely.
But this is tough to do, because you have also hierarchies in a company, and you have politics as well. And then you have the head of a business line who delivers half of the profits for the company, saying, no, we need the campaign right now. I say, because I contribute, I say we need it right now. And this is how the customer in the end is being made a disservice, because maybe not always the communication is relevant for them.
Yeah, absolutely right. And when we think about it, the idea of being data-driven, of being analytics-driven, should be easy for banks, because banks have enormous amounts of data, not just about their own customers, but about the market in which they operate, about their competitors, about the supply chain. Banks probably have more information than anybody else, apart from Google or Facebook or Amazon, of course. And as a result, if they are minded to start from, okay, what does the market data tell us? What do the analytics indicate is the unmet need for our SME banking customers, and how do we fulfill that? It should be a more straightforward operation for a bank than almost any other organization. And it's interesting, because the Agile Marketing Manifesto, which and I think somebody said to me the other day, we don't need another manifesto. Actually, I think the manifesto is quite a good idea, because it's just a list of bullet points that says, actually, these are the principles on which we should operate our bit of the function of the business. And I came across a dark Agile manifesto just about a year or so ago. And this is quite interesting, because the original Agile manifesto says we value these people things over these process things. And so we recognize there is value in the processes. However, there is more value in the people bits. And the dark Agile manifesto says there's only value in the people bits. There's no value whatsoever in the processes or the documentation or any of that sort of stuff. None of that adds any value for the customer. Only these three things: customer collaboration, people and engagement. Only those things actually add any value. And in a way, the marketing team should adopt that mindset, because of course a bank will require people to have processes and documentation. They're a regulated organization. At the same time, if we start from the principle, what could we do if there were no limits on our behavior? How could we fulfill our purpose and give real value to the customer if we were not held back by compliance and regulation? Then actually, just like a brainstorming session, come up with a whole load of ideas and then remove the ones that actually do not fit regulatory and compliance requirements. And that will leave the banks and the marketing team within the bank with some innovative ideas that might not otherwise have come up, because people will say, you can't do that. And I think that idea of starting from that brainstorming idea and then, of course, engaging the rest of the bank in that is one approach that agile marketeers might take.
Indeed,
Yes.
designing your internal flows of delivering products around the customer, and checking from what you have right now and understanding, you know me, I'm also a big fan of Lean Six Sigma, understanding from your process what percentage is that you deliver value for the customer and what percentage of your processes, checks and balances that you do, segregation, everything that you do, what is the percentage that you do for yourself or for regulatory purposes, or just because this is your internal policy, or just because this is how we used to do things. This would come as a shock at the end of the day, and especially for these highly regulated industries. I have done this mapping as well, and I have understood that a lot of the parts in the process were, of course, for regulation. You don't touch that. We don't discuss that. But a lot of them were because it's a group policy, but we don't understand exactly, because we used to do them like this, because we need to make this reporting, so on and so forth. And what you get a product in the end that is chopped, it's instead of having its perfection, you start to cut on the corners to make it fit also with the organization. In a way, no?
Yep. And interesting, one of the reasons for that is there is more than one customer for the bank. Because, of course, in the context that we're talking about now, SMEs are the customer base. The regulator is also a customer for the bank. And the bank must do things which fulfill the regulator's requirements. And then there are the shareholders, the people who put up the capital for the bank to exist. There are other stakeholders, of course, like the employees themselves, the suppliers and things. However, if we think purely about customers, direct customers for the bank, yes, the SMEs, yes, the regulator, and yes, the shareholders. And their needs are not all exactly the same. And there are some conflicts between those needs. And I think that idea of being adaptive and flexible enough, agile enough to be able to identify and fulfill the optimum number of needs, if you like, the minimum viable fulfillment between those three sets of customers, is the province actually of the marketing team. Because the marketing team's first role is to understand the requirements of the customer, whichever customer that might be. And there's a huge opportunity here for marketing within SME banking to really, really change the nature of the business that they are in for the better, actually, because one of the first constituencies to be persuaded is people like the shareholders. Because, of course, if they satisfy the requirements of the SMEs and the regulators, the shareholders will eventually be happy, because the market will come to the bank.
Yeah,
that's
definitely.
If ever I heard one.
I actually just thought that actually all of our episodes that we are discussing, and like everything actually starting from the mindset and just of the organization or of the top management, I'd say. Because probably why it is easier to get not only marketing, but all the people in the development team involved into the process of product launch or creation and launch, when this is just because you're working in a small team, and in this small team you have the same targets, you have the same purpose. Well, for example, in the structure, I'm getting back to my banking times, and remembering, yes, the creation and the product process in the banks in non-agile structure. And when you have a marketing department separate, and even if you have a devoted person to SME, for example, banking in that department, so it happens that as this is a separate department, they have really separate targets, separate purposes, and very usually they're not responsible for the budget, they're not responsible for sales and for the profits and for the business results. And that's why the product people or product teams, which is a business line, are responsible, for everything, for the product, for fast product development, for the launch, and for the results. And that's why just because when you are located in separate teams, you're happy if you have kind of partnership when people really is getting from other departments involved in the process. But this is very rare when they have different targets. And this is probably the crucial thing in the Agile, that everybody is working on a small team. The time is limited, the purpose is the same, and this actually makes this process and launch of the product effective here.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And the challenge of mindset, because it is a requirement for everybody in an agile structure to have a mindset that is based around agility. The challenge is, we already know it's difficult to scale a mindset. It's difficult to get other people to adopt a similar mindset. And we see this even in teams which lend themselves to the original principles of Agile. In software teams, for example, it's difficult to scale Agile thinking. So imagine how much more difficult it is to scale that Agile mindset in teams which are not directly associated with marketing or with risk, when, as you quite rightly said, Elena, they all have their own agenda, they all have their own P&L to worry about, and the marketing team has no authority. So I think one of the ways to get over that is to say, this is not just about mindset, it's about behavior. Because actually we can think agile as long as we like. Unless we behave in an agile manner, it doesn't change the outcome that we try to achieve. So if, in this case, we use the marketing team as an example, if they can adopt themselves an agile mindset and role model the behaviors of agility, and successfully, then they may find other people coming along from other parts of the business to say, actually, that looks quite interesting, because it works. Not because of, it's a good way to think, but actually because it produces a result. And that means it's quite a long game to make an organization agile, certainly an organization as large as a bank.
Yes,
I would only add something to what John has mentioned. Beside the behavior, and I'm being a bit cynical right now, again, with the organization fighting themselves to be better. Also, accompany whatever desire for agility you have and design of purpose for this cross-functional team, accompany that with the proper performance management system in place. Because people, this is something that is inspiring, yes, to have a common purpose. But after 2-3 months, if my evaluation depends on something else, and if I can only get the 5% salary increase or the annual bonus, depending on something that does not put any price, put any value on my cross collaboration, then yes, I might collaborate with the others, but at the end of the day, also I like the salary and the money that I get. So I've seen also in reality, you have this tool making a disconnect, and an organization should not forget also about this part, the performance part.
And yeah, absolutely. So rewarding agility is important, and maybe that's a subject for a future Agile Mondays, the idea of agile performance management. I think that would make quite a conversation piece, I think.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to hear from our audience if they wanted to drop us a line with their views on things like the rewarding of agility and agile performance management.
There's actually an entire movement called Agile in HR, and I've had the pleasure to work with a customer, with their HR department, to look together on various parts of HR that were impacted by the whole organization going into the Agile mode. And it's not only performance management; it's redesign of the jobs and the requirement for the job, redesign of internal hierarchy, and who is the boss of whom, and who is how do you value these people. It's amazing. The implications on the HR are incredible.
Well, that's a management challenge. Got another 3 hours of conversation in it at least.
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
Yes. And I think actually we have a topic for the next Agile Monday already. Yeah, so
we could, yeah.
Yeah, so we are reaching our time, and it's time to close today's webinar. So I hope we gave our attendees some knowledge and ideas on what is Agile in marketing, and how actually communicate and cooperate in a small teams and included marketing people in there. So thank you for your attendance, and thank you, John and Marie, as usual, for your contribution. And see you next Monday at 11 a.m.
Thank you, Elena.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
See you next
Bye.
Monday.
Bye. See you next Monday.